At 4:53 on Friday afternoon, Derek Cole had my accounts shut down and told security to walk me out of the building. At 8:17 on Monday morning, he started calling my personal phone 14 times. By then, 23,000 customer orders were frozen. The payment system was hours away from shutting down completely. And the CEO wanted to know why the only person authorized to fix any of it was the woman they had fired 3 days earlier. Everyone assumed I had sabotaged the company on my way out. They were wrong. I hadn't touched a thing. I had simply stopped saving them from the problems they had spent 6 months pretending didn't exist. My name is Maya Bennett. I'm 34. And for 8 years, I was the person nobody at Orion Commerce ever really saw, until the Monday morning when I was all they could see. If you want to know why I was fired, why I was the only one who could fix it, and what Derek Cole was hiding, stay with me to the end. Because the biggest twist in this story isn't what happened Monday morning, it's what they found in his inbox. On my business card, my title was Operations Coordinator. On paper, my job was 4 lines long: coordinate vendors, manage the operations calendar, track contracts, support other teams as needed. Those 4 lines were why they paid me. They were not why this company was still standing. Because in reality, I maintained the access map for the entire operation, not the passwords themselves. Those lived in the corporate credential vault, where they belonged. What I held was the map. Who was authorized to touch what? Which vendor would only take instructions from which named contact? Which recovery procedure applied to which kind of failure? And in what order the steps had to happen. I was the authorized contact of record for our payment provider and for our warehouse partner. I tracked the renewal dates that nobody else tracked. And I ran the dozen manual processes that every previous director had promised to automate and then forgotten. I'm not a technical genius. I don't write code. I don't have an MBA. I was just the person who wrote everything down, fixed problems while they were still small, and remembered the things everyone else allowed themselves to forget. Last March, a warehouse system update scrambled the product codes on 4,000 orders. I caught it at 9 on a Sunday night, spent 3 hours on the phone with the night shift manager, and had it corrected before the morning crew clocked in. At Monday's meeting, the warehouse director said, "System ran smooth all weekend." Everyone nodded. So did I, and that was my problem. For 8 years, I fixed things silently, after hours, without reports, without credit. I thought that was dedication. I thought doing my job so well that nobody ever noticed a problem was the highest form of the craft. What I was actually doing was teaching the entire leadership team one fatal lesson: that the system ran itself. That smooth was its natural state, that the woman in the corner of the 3rd floor, the one they called the admin lady, just sent emails, chased calendars, and kept lists. My biggest mistake was never that I did too much. It's that I did it too quietly. And then, one Tuesday morning in January, that mistake stepped out of the elevator in a $3,000 suit, carrying a plan called Clean Slate. I should introduce 2 people here, because this story belongs to them as much as to me. The first is Elaine Foster, our CEO. Elaine thinks in quarters and funding rounds. She can quote revenue per employee from memory, and she once told an all-hands, without a trace of irony, "Show me the number, and I'll show you the decision." She isn't cruel. She's just a woman who trusts reports, and who assumes the people beneath her make sure the reports are true. The second walked onto our stage at that same January all hands, and Elaine introduced him herself. At his last company, Derek automated an entire procurement department and saved $11 million. When Derek talks about efficiency, I want everyone in this room listening. Here's the thing you need to understand about Derek Cole. That story was true. He really had done it. Invoices, purchase orders, three-way matching. Rule-based work, perfect for software. He'd cut a 40-person department to 9, and the numbers genuinely held. And that success was the most dangerous thing about him. Derek wasn't stupid. Derek was a man with one hammer and a wall full of framed nails, and he had stopped being able to imagine a job that wasn't one. His second week, he announced Project Clean Slate, 15% off operating costs in 6 months, ahead of the biggest funding round in company history. One slide stayed on screen longer than the rest. If a role doesn't show up on a dashboard, ask why it exists. His third week, he called me into the glass conference room. He didn't ask me to sit. He looked at my file on his tablet, looked up, and asked the question I will remember for the rest of my life. What do you actually do all day? I tried to explain. I said my work lived between departments in the gaps no team claimed. I said most of my value was made of incidents that never happened, contracts that never lapsed, midnight calls nobody ever had to know about. Derek heard all of it. Then he smiled, the smile of a man who had written his conclusion before he asked his question. If you can't measure it, Ms. Bennett, maybe it isn't creating value. From that day, he had me log my time in 15-minute blocks. But my work didn't happen in scheduled meetings. It happened in interruptions. The 7 p.m. email, the vendor call that cut across lunch, the sprint down to the loading dock over one crooked tracking number. On Derek's timesheet, my 10-hour days looked like rows of empty boxes, and to Derek, an empty box meant a redundant one. At the end of that month, the company hired Noah Kim, 25, sharp, eager, job title, operations analyst. They sat him 3 desks from mine. He didn't know what he'd been hired for. I did. I had seen how Derek looked at me in meetings, not like a colleague, but like a cost that had already been circled in red, waiting for the stroke that crossed it out. What I didn't know yet was that he was willing to bet the biggest sales week of the year to prove that red stroke was right. In April, during the quarterly operations review, I found 3 time bombs ticking toward the same date, Mega Week, our biggest sales event of the year, scheduled for mid-July. Bomb 1, the authentication certificate for Verity Pay, our payment gateway, expired that exact week. Without renewal, every transaction would be declined. And under the contract, renewal requests were only accepted from the authorized contact on file. That contact was me, and had been since year 1, back when this company didn't have an IT department. Bomb 2. Harlan Logistics, who ran our warehouse systems. Our emergency support agreement, 1-hour response instead of 5 business days, was active through the end of July, so it covered Mega Week. But it came up for renewal right after, and far more urgently. The only authorized contact on that account was, again, me. Transferring that authorization required a signed request from operations leadership. Bomb 3. The privileged admin role in our identity system, the role that could approve emergency changes, including vendor authorizations, was still bound to my personal identity, a leftover from the days when we were 30 people. It needed to be moved to a shared IT role with named backups. I wrote it all up for Derek with 4 proposals. Train a backup for my position. I even named the trainee Noah Kim. Transfer the admin role to Lena Ortiz's IT department. Finish the handover documentation. and run one incident drill before Mega Week. 3 days later, Derek replied in 2 lines. These items are not revenue generating, not a priority during Clean Slate. I sent a follow-up with the math. If the payment gateway went down mid-Mega Week, we'd lose roughly $400,000 an hour. Derek called me into his office. Ms. Bennett, he said in the voice of a man performing patience, I need you to stop sending alarming emails. We're preparing to raise. The last thing I need is someone building a paper trail of disaster scenarios. Paper trail. He said it like a crime. That day, I started doing something I had never done in 8 years. I documented everything. Every warning went in writing. Every refusal got a confirmation email back. As discussed this morning, you've decided not to approve the backup training proposal. Noted. I'll continue monitoring the risk. Polite? Precise. Time-stamped. Derek thought I had finally gone quiet. Actually, I was doing the thing I have always done best, preparing for the incident that nobody believed in yet. In May, Derek brought in a piece of software called Flowdesk. At the demo, he stood in front of the whole department like he was launching a phone. This tool will automate 80% of operations coordination. Flowdesk did 3 things. It sent reminders, it generated reports, and it routed requests to the right department. It could not call Harlan at midnight. It could not talk a vendor into handling an exception. It could not decide which orders to hold and which to cancel when systems failed. It didn't know what the Verity Pay certificate meant. It only knew how to send one line. An event is coming due. But on Derek's slide, in front of Elaine Foster, all of that folded into a single sentence. The operations coordination role has been fully automated. Net savings, $140,000 a year. Elaine nodded. She trusts reports, and Derek's reports were always beautiful. In June, something small happened that matters enormously later. A duplicate shipment glitch popped up in the warehouse queue, and I waved Noah over to my desk. Watch this once, I told him, and you'll be able to run it yourself next time. I got about 2 minutes in before Derek appeared behind us. Noah, Flowdesk training, conference room, now. Noah gave me an apologetic look and went. Those 2 minutes were the entire practical education Noah Kim ever received from me. Remember that. It matters later. Then, on a Thursday night in late June, I came back to the office for a charger I'd forgotten. The glass conference room was still lit. Derek was on the phone, back to the door, voice loud enough to carry, "Fire her before the sale. If everything still runs through Mega Week, I've proven my point, and nobody questions the rest of Clean Slate again." I stood in the dark hallway with the charger in my hand, and my heart beat very slowly and very clearly. He wasn't just cutting my position. He was turning me into a bet. 23,000 customers laid on the table as stakes for his own reputation. That night, I went home and finished what I had started 3 months earlier, the handover plan. Every process, every contact, every credential that needed to be reassigned through the vault. Every failure scenario with its recovery steps, including the emergency restore procedure on page 89, the one that would eventually save the company. The next morning, I sent it to Derek for the 3rd time. He replied in 4 minutes, faster than the file could have opened. Received, not a priority. Friday, July 10th, 3 days before Mega Week. At 4:30, a new meeting appeared on my calendar. Personnel discussion. Room 3B. Organizer, Derek Cole. One guest, an HR specialist I had never met. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. Derek read from a sheet of paper. The operations coordinator position was eliminated, effective immediately, as part of the Clean Slate restructuring. The company thanked me for 8 years of contribution. I had 20 minutes to hand over my laptop and badge and leave the building. I asked the only question that still mattered. What about the handover? Derek looked up from his sheet, and he said the sentence that, months later, the legal department would make him repeat word for word in front of the board. If the system was designed properly, we wouldn't need you to hand it over. I opened my bag and set a thick spiral-bound document on the table. 147 pages. This is the handover plan I sent you 3 times, I said, in print, in case you ever want to read something that isn't on a dashboard. Derek didn't open it. He slid it back across the table, neat as a man clearing a piece from a board. Security will take you down. I packed in 14 minutes. 1 cardboard box, a small pothos plant, 2 notebooks, the mug from the 2019 holiday party. The 3rd floor went completely silent. Noah half stood, started to say something, and didn't. Lena Ortiz, our head of IT, watched me through the glass with an expression I couldn't read. At 4:53, while I was still waiting for the elevator, the system logged a ticket from Derek Cole to IT. Deactivate Maya Bennett's accounts immediately. Revoke all active sessions. Remove her from the identity management system. Standard offboarding, on paper, fast, clean by the book. Except for one detail that nobody in that approval chain understood. The privileged admin role was still bound to my identity. The shared backup role I had formally requested twice had never been created. So the moment I was removed from the identity system, those permissions didn't transfer to anyone. They were orphaned. That evening, at 8:57, my personal phone buzzed. A reminder I had set for myself 3 months earlier, back when I still believed someone would listen. Verity Pay Certificate expires Monday, 12 noon. I stared at that line for a long time. Then I did the math. 63 hours. I had warned them 6 times in writing. I had proposed 4 fixes. I had printed the whole plan and put it in the decision-maker's hands. They hadn't just refused, they had treated the warnings themselves as the problem. So that night, for the first time in 8 years, I didn't open a laptop. I turned off my 6 a.m. alarm, and I went to sleep. What follows is Monday morning at Orion Commerce, reconstructed from system logs, the people who were in the room, and the 14 voicemails in my inbox. 8:03. Noah Kim arrives early, wired for the big day, and logs into the warehouse console. The screen says, insufficient permissions. He tries the shared operations account. It was never granted those rights. Every critical permission had lived inside the admin role, the role that, as of Friday at 4:53, belonged to no one. Within minutes, orders stop syncing to the warehouse. Customers keep buying. Cards keep getting charged. But behind the bright red Mega Week banner, the conveyor belt of data has gone still. 8:17. I'm at home, pouring coffee, when the phone lights up. Derek Cole. I let it ring out. He calls again and again. After the 5th call, I sent him one text message. I want you to hear it exactly as I wrote it, because it matters for everything that comes after. Derek, I am no longer an employee and I have no legal authorization to access Orion systems. If the company needs my help, have legal send written authorization and a scope of work. I will respond to that. He never answered it. He just kept calling. And I understood why. A written authorization would have been an admission, in writing, discoverable, permanent, that the company still needed the woman whose job he had just declared automated. So he called, and I didn't answer. And in the gap between his pride and my phone, 23,000 orders kept piling up. The voicemails tell their own story. The first one is an order. The seventh is shouting. By the 12th, his voice has cracked into something very close to begging. 8:25. Verity Pay sends its final warning to the operations mailbox. Certificate expires in 3 hours and 35 minutes. After that, all transactions will be suspended. Flowdesk, Derek's software, dutifully forwards the alert to a group inbox that no human being had ever been assigned to read. 8:40. Lena calls Harlan's emergency line herself. The contract is active, the support team is right there, and the answer comes back polite and cold as steel. Under the security terms of your agreement, we can only act on requests from your authorized contact. Our records show that's Ms. Maya Bennett. Derek, standing in the middle of the improvised war room, snaps at it. Then log in as her. Change the contact. Lena looks at him for 3 full seconds. Later, she'd say, those were the 3 seconds she spent searching for a version of the truth that wouldn't end her career. Her identity was removed from the system Friday at 4:53. Your ticket. The admin role that can change vendor authorization was bound to that identity, and the backup role was never approved. Those permissions are orphaned. Right now, nobody in this building can make that change. Meanwhile, the money kept burning. The Mega Week campaign, a $2 million push, was still pulling thousands of shoppers an hour into a store that took their money and couldn't ship. Marketing could have paused it, but a campaign that size needed sign-off from both the budget owner and operations leadership. And for the next 90 minutes, everyone with the authority to say yes was in a different meeting, blaming a different person. So the ads just kept running. By 9 a.m., customer support had logged over 3,000 calls. The frozen order count passed 23,000. And in a kitchen 20 minutes from the office, I sat with my coffee and watched the phone buzz for the 14th time. I didn't feel triumphant. Honestly, I felt sad for Noah, for Lena, for 23,000 customers who had no part in Derek's bet. But I had also sent my terms, and I knew exactly what was coming next. Because when a system collapses, people don't go looking for the cause. They go looking for someone to blame. At 9:20 in the war room, Derek found his story. Bennett did this, he told Elaine over the phone. Fired on Friday, collapse on Monday. You think that's a coincidence? She planted something on her way out. This is sabotage. At 9:31, my phone showed an unknown number. This time I answered. It was Miss Whitfield from Orion's legal department. Her voice level and lawyer drafted. The company was investigating a serious incident. There were questions regarding possible unauthorized interference, and I was asked to account for my actions. I gave her exactly what I had prepared on Friday night. I have not accessed any Orion system since the company revoked my equipment at 4:53 on Friday afternoon. Every action leaves a trace. Check the logs. And check the text message I sent Derek Cole at 8:29 this morning. I offered to respond to written authorization. I'm still waiting for it. They checked. Lena personally audited every access log from the entire weekend. The result? No logins, no remote sessions, nothing. My identity didn't even exist in the system anymore to log in with. Derek had seen to that himself. But Derek didn't retreat. Men who are good at presentations always have a plan B, and his was far more poisonous. Then she sabotaged it a different way, he told the emergency meeting just before 10. 8 years, she designed every process around herself. No documentation, no training, no sharing. She made this company her hostage. That's not negligence, that's sabotage with a long fuse. And I'll admit it, that was a good story. It fit everything people could see. The quiet woman who was the named contact for every vendor, the single thread running through every system. Who wouldn't wonder? Even Lena wavered. She told me later what went through her head that morning. The logs prove Maya didn't break the system. They don't prove she didn't build it this way. If you've been listening and quietly wondering the same thing, whether I really did keep it all to myself, I don't blame you. The answer was sitting in the one place Derek forgot to clean: his own inbox. Here's a detail that matters. Lena didn't go digging on her own. At 10:05, Ms. Whitfield, now covering the company's legal exposure from every direction, opened an emergency e-discovery hold and formally instructed Lena, as systems administrator, to pull every message connected to Maya Bennett, operational risk, and Mega Week. So when Lena opened Derek Cole's mailbox, she wasn't snooping. She was under written instruction from legal, which made everything she found official. And what she found made her sit very still in front of her screen. 6 warning emails, April through July, each one naming the same 3 risks: the Verity Pay certificate, the Harlan authorization, the admin role, 3 backup training plans, complete with timelines and a proposed trainee, Noah Kim. 2 formal requests to transfer the admin role to Lena's own department. Requests she had never seen because they had died in this mailbox. And 1 attachment, sent 3 times, the last on Friday morning: handover and business continuity plan, Orion Commerce. 147 pages. Every single item carried the same reply, in the same hand: not a priority. The last piece came from Noah. He appeared at the server room door, pale, carrying something he'd been holding in for 2 hours. Lena, I have to tell you something. My first day, I asked Derek for Maya's process documentation. He told me not to touch it. He said, Noah swallowed, I don't want you stuck in her old way of doing things. My whole handover training was 30 minutes, and half of it was Flowdesk. And the one time she tried to actually walk me through a live incident, he pulled me out of the room. Lena looked at him, then at the screen. And the entire story turned inside out. Maya Bennett hadn't built a company that depended on her. She had spent her final 6 months trying to do the opposite, to make herself replaceable. She wrote the documentation. She asked to train her successor. She asked to give the admin role away. And the man who blocked all of it 6 times in a row was Derek, because a smooth handover would have destroyed his story. If replacing Maya Bennett took a 3-month training plan and a manual that thick, then her role was never largely administrative. And Clean Slate's flagship saving was a lie. He needed me to walk out with nothing: no handover, no successor, no trace. He wasn't betting that the system would hold. He was betting that I had been lying about the risk. At 10:28, Lena forwarded the entire file: 6 warnings, 3 plans, 2 requests, and the handover document, directly to Elaine Foster, with a single line on top: You need to read this before you listen to anyone else. At 10:31, my phone lit up with a name that had never once called me in 8 years. Elaine Foster. I answered. No small talk. Elaine isn't built for it. She said she had read what Lena sent. Not all of the handover plan, but, as she put it, 6 replies that say, not a priority, don't take long to read. She said the company was losing $400,000 an hour. She said, Miss Bennett, I need you back in this office. Now. And here is the moment where the Maya of 8 years ago would have grabbed her car keys before the sentence ended. The Maya of that morning said slowly and clearly, "Mr. Foster, the company terminated my contract and my access on Friday afternoon. This morning, your operations director accused me of sabotage, and your legal team called to question me. I will not walk into your systems on a phone call and a promise." Silence on the line. Then I said the sentence I'd had 6 months to sharpen. And let's be clear about one thing. You didn't lose access because I left. You lost access because the company removed the only backup plan I kept asking you to build. Then I gave her 3 conditions. Not revenge, not ransom, just the 3 things any professional should demand after a weekend like that. 1. A written emergency consulting agreement signed before I touch anything. Scope, access, and authorization in black and white, so that every action I take is legal and on the record. 2. I work directly with Lena Ortiz and her IT team, not through Derek Cole, not reporting to him, not taking direction from him, not letting him stand between me and a single decision. Once was enough. 3. The entire recovery gets recorded and documented, step by step, as training material for whoever comes after me. Because I'm not coming back to be irreplaceable again, I told her. I'm coming back to make sure nobody ever has to call me twice. Elaine Foster is a woman of numbers and fast decisions. She was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. The contract will be in your inbox in 15 minutes. Lena will meet you in the lobby. It arrived in 11. I read it. Of course I read it. Signed and picked up my keys. On the drive over, I ran page 89 through my head. I didn't need to open the file. I wrote it. At 11:05, I walked through the revolving doors of Orion Commerce with a visitor badge stuck to my shirt. The same doors I'd been escorted out of 3 days earlier. The 3rd floor stood up to watch. People who had called me the admin lady for 8 years stepped aside like I was a surgeon walking into an operating room. I didn't touch a keyboard for the first 10 minutes. I stood in the war room with the handover plan open on the table. Lena had reprinted it, and I handed out exactly 3 jobs. Lena, page 89, emergency access recovery, rebuild the admin role as a shared IT role with 3 named backups. From today, no permission in this company dies with a person again. Noah, Harlan's emergency line. Ask for Dana Whitmore and tell her Maya Bennett is on the call. The contract is active. The only thing broken is the contact. Finance and marketing. Stop charging customers for anything we can't ship. And get the budget owner and the ops lead onto one thread. The campaign pause needs both signatures. You have 10 minutes. Then I dialed the VerityPay escalation desk, a number I know by heart, verified my identity as the authorized contact, and triggered 2 things: an emergency certificate reissue, and the change that mattered most of all, moving authorized contact off my personal name and onto an IT role with 3 named backups. Notice what I didn't do. I didn't write a line of code. I didn't perform a miracle. What 8 quiet years leave you with is simpler and rarer. Knowing exactly who to call, in exactly what order, about exactly the right risk first. That's the job they said was just sending emails and keeping lists. 11:24. Harlan restores access, and the queued orders start flowing to the warehouse. 11:31. The new certificate goes live 29 minutes before the deadline. 11:35. The campaign pauses, and finance starts reconciling. 11:42. The big board in the war room flips from red to green. 23,000 orders begin to move. Somebody claps. Then everybody does. I looked around for Derek. He was in the corner, phone in hand, and I knew exactly what he was doing, drafting his version of the story for the meeting to come. The company still lost money that day, about 1.8 million, counting refunds, wasted ad spend, and late delivery credits. The post-incident review estimated that if the outage had run through Mega Week, the number would have passed 20 million, plus a dead funding round. Derek would tell the board that his team had contained it. What he didn't know was that Elaine Foster had finished reading. Wednesday morning, the fifth floor boardroom, incident review with the executive team and 2 board members present. I was invited as the consultant to present the technical report. Derek went first, and credit where it's due. He was good. Clean slides, steady voice, 15 minutes turning a catastrophe into a resilience test that this organization passed in a single morning, thanks to decisive operational response. When he finished, Elaine didn't look at the slides. She reached down to the chair beside her, lifted a spiral-bound stack, and set it in the middle of the table. Paper hitting wood, loud in the quiet room. 147 pages. Mr. Cole, is this the document Miss Bennett sent you 6 weeks ago? Derek glanced down. I received a document. It was overly technical and unnecessary at the time. We were in a streamlining phase. Unnecessary. Elaine opened it to a flagged page. Page 89. The procedure IT used Monday morning to restore this company, step by step. She turned to another. Page 102. The direct line and the name of our account manager at Harlan Logistics. She closed the plan. Send in Mr. Kim. Noah came in nervous, but he didn't back down. He described his 30-minute handover, half of it flow desk. He repeated Derek's words exactly. I don't want you stuck in her old way of doing things. Then Lena put the 6 warning emails on the screen, in chronological order, each with its reply attached. 6 stamps, same hand. Not a priority. Derek fought to the last. Those were judgment calls based on the information available at the time. Management means taking calculated risks. Calculated, Elaine repeated. Then, let's see the calculation. She nodded to me. I turned to the final page of my report. A scan from Derek's own clean slate proposal to the board in June. The footnote, small type, his own words. Operational disruption risk, minimal. Bennett's responsibilities appear largely administrative. Elaine read that line twice. Then she looked up and asked the question that no slide in the world can survive. Do 23,000 frozen orders fall inside your definition of minimal, Mr. Cole? The silence went on long enough to hear the air conditioning, and into that silence, I said the only thing I had come there to say. Not loud, not shaking. I'd been waiting 6 months for this sentence. You didn't automate my job, Derek. You automated the reminders and fired the person who knew what they meant. After the meeting, Elaine asked me to stay. She offered exactly what everyone expected. My old position back, a 40% raise, a shinier title on top. 8 years ago, that offer would have made me cry. That day, I turned it down. Ms. Foster, if I take my old job at higher pay, you're just paying more for the same flaw. One person who knows everything. I don't want to be the only one anymore. I want to build a system where nobody has to be. Elaine did what good leaders do when they hear a better idea than their own. She changed the offer. A week later, I came back to Orion as Director of Operational Resilience. My team owns 4 things. Documentation of every critical process. Cross-training, so every key role has 2 backups. operational risk governance, and recovery plans that actually get rehearsed. I set one condition, and I made them put it in writing. My team can stop any project that fails the handover standard. No documentation, no backup, no launch, no exceptions, not even for anyone's strategic initiatives. Derek left the company 2 weeks later. The internal memo said pursuing new opportunities. The legal file said it shorter, terminated for concealing material risk and misinforming the executive team ahead of a raise. I wasn't in that meeting. I was interviewing 3 candidates for my new team. 3 months later, on an ordinary Tuesday, the warehouse sink failed at 7:40 in the morning. The exact species of failure that once brought this company to its knees. My phone didn't ring, not once. At 8:15, a notification crossed my screen. Incident 4417. Resolved. Handled by Noah Kim. Procedure. Operations Runbook, Section 12.3. He never even thought about calling me. I sat there looking at that little notification, and I smiled. The realest smile of my career. I used to think being needed was the proof that I mattered. I was wrong. In a way, it took getting fired to understand. The best work I ever did was never the nights I quietly saved the system. The best work I ever did was building a system that runs perfectly, even when I'm not there. If you've ever been the Maya at your company, the person quietly holding everything together while nobody notices, remember the 2 things she learned. Don't let your value stay invisible, and don't let yourself become the single point of failure. Have you ever watched a company fire the one person it couldn't afford to lose? Tell me about it in the comments. And if this story was worth staying to the end, subscribing makes sure the next one finds you.